Hi, everyone. It's CricketSong with Lunar Wisdom, and you are watching another episode of Wyrds, Witches, Witchcraft. I'm here with my usual co-host, Obsidian Fire.
Bonjour, hey. J'espère que vous allez bien, j'espère que cette conversation va vous intéresser. Et comme d'habitude, n'hésitez pas à participer en live ou à laisser des commentaires. Et surtout, à la semaine prochaine.
Yay! And tonight we have a special guest, Bettina from the Queen's Grove. Introduce or say hello.
Hi. Yes, my name is Bettina. I am in Massachusetts. I run a little traveling metaphysical and healing shop called the Queen's Grove, formerly Tree of Life Energy Medicine. And what I typically do is I travel around southern New England and I offer Reiki and crystal healing, and I sell all sorts of pagan-y supplies. I'm like, you know, the witchy general store. I've got books and crystals, handmade jewelry, all the fun stuff. So that's me.
Yay. And tonight we are going to be talking about exploitation and appropriation in the pagan, witchy, new age community. I think I covered all the communities we're going to be.
You've got all the branches there.
Great, great. Hi, everybody in chat. We do have some viewers tonight. Very good. If you have questions as we go along with our conversation, please feel free to type them out. I ask you to type them in capital letters so that people can find it. Oh, we got to echo. Okay. So that we can catch your questions. So if you would type them in capital letters, that would be helpful to us. Okay. So where do you want to start with this topic, Bettina?
So I think the best place to start would be to kind of define the terms we've just thrown out, because I feel like certain people might have certain connotations when they hear the word exploitation, appropriation. So exploitation is simply, it's taking advantage of somebody, treating someone unfairly in order to benefit from their work. Very, very simple. And then appropriation, in terms of cultural appropriation, is when you're, again, taking something that's not yours, in particular, taking something from a culture or a people that have historically been marginalized and using it for yourself without any reference or acknowledgement of where it came from, of where the practice came from, whatever it might be.
When you're talking about that, I just want to make sure, are we talking about that in the sense of outside of your own personal practice?
It could be, yes, it could be. Borrowing. I know it's hard as modern day pagans. Hardly anybody in the pagan community will have a practice that has been pure and unbroken since pre-Christian times. It just doesn't exist. Right. So, of course, we have to adapt. We have to borrow where appropriate. I like to call it, like, I'm a Druid, I'm a Celtic pagan. Those were oral traditions 2,000 years ago or more. I call it Swiss cheese religion, Swiss cheese spirituality. There are holes, there are gaps. I have to adapt them, which means I may have to borrow from other cultures, other religions, like I said, when it's appropriate, when it makes sense. Now, that may or may not be the same thing as stealing it without reference to its original or its culture.
How would one look different from the other? Because what I'm thinking is of an individual like myself who is very eclectic. Mm-hmm. You know, I have practices within my own spiritual practice, and I'm solitary at this point, where, you know, I may incorporate the idea of Reiki into my personal practice, but then I may be rooted in like a Wiccan practice, but I may also be worshiping gods from the Celtic pantheon. So, I mean, how would borrowing, what would it look like to borrow, and what would it look like to appropriate? Yeah.
I think the major differentiation is cultural appropriation versus cultural exchange and a sharing of cultural or religious, spiritual, or life experiences. So, like, I own a sari, right? Mm-hmm. I purchased it from an Indian-owned shop. Mm-hmm. I don't wear it as a costume. If I were going to wear it, I would wear it to Diwali, or I would wear it to go to an appropriate function. I wouldn't, you know, like I said, I wouldn't wear it as a Halloween costume. I think there's the line. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, cultural exchange, I think, is important, and it's vital. I feel, especially in a breadbasket culture, we should be sharing our cultural experiences, our spiritualities. We should not be just wearing an Indian headdress for Halloween and doing really racist things.
Okay. Okay,
You know
that makes sense, right? Yeah. And the reason I also ask is because years ago, maybe a year ago, when I was taking yoga, when I was practicing yoga in a yoga studio for spiritual reasons, it wasn't like in a gym. It was in a yoga studio with individuals who were teaching the spirituality as well as the physical practice. It was a combination. I began wearing a bindi, and I was accused of cultural appropriation. Yes. And I did not feel it was that. I didn't feel I was, because it was becoming part of my own spiritual practice. Granted, I was not, you know, studying per se and I was not practicing the whole, you know, religion, but I was actually going to yoga 2 or 3 times a week, and I was incorporating that in my own spiritual journey. So I guess for individuals who, I mean, would you consider that, I mean, appropriation, or, you know, not, I felt it was sacred. I felt I was showing reverence to it, but maybe I wasn't. Maybe I was being ignorant.
I think you personally, because I know you, I would say you were not committing cultural appropriation in that instance. I can see, because we're white women, we're white Western women, if you're going to look at the cover of the book, it might seem like, oh, she's wearing a bindi, but she's not Indian. What is she doing? It's like, okay, context.
Right.
Intention is important. So just because we're white women, you're wearing a bindi. My in-laws are Sikhs, so I have been to their ashram, and my mother-in-law will put my hair in a turban. I have a lot of it. Looks awesome, and I wear all white. And I go, and I feel like, oh, I'm not Sikh. I feel like this is wrong. But in the appropriate context, I've been invited. You know,
right.
I'm wearing the appropriate outfit in the appropriate place. So I feel like context and intention would be important. And people just looking at you on the street, or, you know, are not going to know your whole backstory. Why are you wearing that bindi, white lady?
Right. Okay. I agree with you, because sometimes we don't know what the whole story is in any situation. Right. Okay.
I think, you know, side note, I do think it's important and it's valid when a person of color, in this case, an Indian person or a Native American person, when they say over and over again, we collectively do not like when you do X, Y, Z. I think then it's definitely really important to take notice. But I think otherwise, if you're practicing yoga appropriately, it's coming from a sacred place, and I don't see there's anything wrong with that.
Right. It's a really touchy subject, I think, and it's really there's this thin line between the two sometimes. Other times I think it's quite blatant and clearly seen where situations are appropriation.
Yeah, and I think I've always been fascinated by the topic, which started for me 10 years ago in college. I wanted to minor in religious studies. With that minor came, we had to take anthropology and various sociology classes and things like that. And in my freshman year, we read a book called Going Native, and it's by Sherry Hundorf. And I remember reading it thinking, yeah, she's right. I agree with everything she's saying, but I feel like she's not. It's a complex issue, and I feel like she's answering some of the questions perfectly, but there's something missing. And I actually once I started my business back in 2014, I started to figure out what I think those missing aspects were, especially for white Westerners. And I think because it's called Going Native, and it's about white Americans appropriating Native practices, Native cultures. And I started thinking like, yeah, she's right. And I think where the parts that she missed, I got to kind of experience firsthand over the last 4 or 5 years running my business, traveling to all these fairs. And I started off doing Reiki, which is Eastern. I started off, I had Buddhas and Ganeshas, and I was all about it. And I still have Buddhas. But as I started doing the fairs and festivals, I started seeing everybody else doing Reiki, everybody else selling, promoting an Eastern philosophy, which there's nothing wrong with. But I started to realize, wait, that I'm not actually Buddhist. I'm not Sikh. I'm not Hindu. I'm Celtic. And then it started to occur to me, I think the reason why a lot of white Westerners are adopting, I know I referenced Buddhism and Hinduism, but I think the reason why a lot of Americans are adopting and ultimately appropriating Native American practices is because we struggle to find connection with our own ancestral paths. That is the long story short. And like I live in Massachusetts. I literally grew up on Nipmuc tribal land. Like that's historically, it belonged to the Nipmuc people. I live on the land where King Philip's War was fought. And yet, like, and the only things I have easy access to are, we have Native powwows throughout the year. You know, we have metaphysical shops that do sell lots of Native spiritual items. Again, because I'm a Celtic, Norse-themed pagan, I have no connection here. And I think that is where the disconnect is for a lot of us. Like when I went to England, go ahead, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I also wonder if sometimes, and I'm going to just take my children, for example. So we did the ancestry DNA thing to find out, where everybody's DNA came from. So my children are very much a melting pot.
Yeah.
So they have 7% Native American.
Mm-hmm.
But then they have like 75% French, 30% French. And then they have this mixture because they are biological fathers from Puerto Rico. So there's some African in there. There's some the blood from India, the Middle East in there. Oh, and then they have this like 7% Native American, right?
Yeah.
So for them, if they, me, I'm 75% French.
Yeah.
So, my ancestors are very French. So I've been on this journey to sort of find out what gods did my ancestors worship, kind of thing. But for my children, it would be very difficult. I mean, and if they feel very drawn to Native American, you may look at them and not think that they're Native American, or you might think they're Native American, depending on your perspective. So their connection, I mean, they could go, I mean, they may feel connected, maybe one child does and one child doesn't. Mm-hmm. So I think that is part of it, that there are a lot of individuals here living, at least in the United States, with ancestors and ancestry that just, is very colorful, like a rainbow. And maybe they connect to Native American, but you look at them and you may not think they have the right, and maybe they're appropriating something that isn't, they're not.
And that's a good point to bring up. There's no wrong way to feel connected. If you feel deeply connected to something, even if it's not your own, that's not inherently wrong. I think it's just in how you execute that connection and that passion. Like I was saying, I went to England, I think before I did my DNA test. I think that's not even relevant. Never mind. But I went to England and I went to Stonehenge and I went throughout the countryside, and being there, I felt like I had somehow gone home. Like I felt this is my island. These are, my people. And I feel like this is where I'm supposed to be. Not that I don't feel that here at home. I've only ever lived in Massachusetts, really. But I found if I kind of stepped back and did a little self-examination, I started to feel like, yeah, okay. So I think when I'm in the United States, when I'm at home, I don't have that connection to my ancestral path. What's the closest thing I do have? Oh, there's a powwow next week at Roger Williams. And if I go there, I might get a little bit of that spiritual connection that I am absolutely craving. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And I can only really speak for myself, but I have started to kind of notice that. I wonder if other people are feeling similarly.
So your thoughts are that because they're not where they're truly connected by blood, by that sort of energetic connection, that then while they're in a place that they're not from per se, that then they seek that connection through maybe the land that they're residing in. And if they're here in America, Native Americans, native to America, they may be connecting with that spiritual energy.
Yeah, I think it could be for some people.
I agree.
I think my husband definitely, when we were talking about it a few times over the last few years, and I think he's starting to be like, I think you're right. I think because we can't just hop on a plane and go visit Scotland or Norway or England, that this is what we've got here. So it's something anyway.
Yeah, no, and it makes sense. What
was I going to say? The other things, as I did all these fairs and festivals, and I love my colleagues, and I've had repeat customers, and it's so much fun. The one thing I have noticed is that here's all these people, they're seeking spiritual evolution and this growth and enlightenment, and they see where we're headed. As a society, we're headed towards a dark place, but we can fix it. Like it's basically the premise of the New Age movement. It's like we're trying to manifest a future of health and wellness and love and light. And I'm like, that's all great, and I love it, and it's fantastic, and I love what I do with the Queen's Grove. The totally messed up thing, and this is, again, exploitation and appropriation, is that I started, when I started selling like crystals and when I basically turned into a retail shop, I started noticing China on a lot of the products I would get from my wholesalers. And okay, well, I can understand where this particular item would be made in China. That's fine. But like all of my crystals, I'm getting like boxes of crystals from my wholesalers, made in China, made in China. And then I'm like, after a while, I'm like, okay, stop. Wait a second. Were my crystals mined by slaves? That honestly was a real question that went through my head. And it's just concerning because, of course, none of us want to profit or have anything to do with modern slavery or sweatshops in the East. None of us want that. But with a lot of our wholesalers, at least some of my wholesalers, there's no transparency. So when I'm getting these products and made in China, I got to step back a second and reevaluate my life.
Yeah.
And it's awful, and it sucks that these are things we have to deal with. Like, we know Nike utilizes sweatshop labor. They're notoriously awful, and Walmart and all those other big box stores, but you don't expect like your incense and your candles and your prayer beads, these enlightening special products to be made in a sweatshop.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Exploitation.
Yeah, I guess that's, obviously, and it must be tough for individuals who are retailers to stay sort of true to the energy of what they're selling, to offer affordable options for their customers, but try to be true to the energy of what you're putting forth.
Right. Right. And it is very discouraging because the problem of exploiting, labor around the world, it's like, you want to stop it. How do you do that? You know, you're part of a growing movement of people that want to see these types of things ended. You know, I don't know a single spiritualist or member of the New Age movement that is, I guess that's how it is. Nobody is blasé about these sorts of things. But at the same time, so many people are just ignorant to it. Like, up until I'm in my 30s now, and up until like a year ago, it just never crossed my mind to check the sources of my products. Things that you don't even think about.
Yeah. I think that's why maybe a lot of individuals either go to like Etsy shops, or they go to a, metaphysical shop where the items are made by the individual who runs the store, oils and things, like that. Maybe that, places online that are local, things like that.
Yeah, and that's great. I do my best to utilize Etsy whenever I can. I have purchased some of my crystals in bulk from Etsy. It's just, I'm one little shop.
Yeah.
How do I, as one person with hundreds of colleagues throughout New England and thousands of people that pass through my booth or pass by my table, how do I, what's the word I'm looking for? Shed light on the overall issue. You know what I mean? Like, this is a huge problem. So many of our products, like, were made overseas. They were made in sweatshops, and it's not something we can just fix overnight. Like, when I kind of started realizing recently that I think my products were made in sweatshops, I told my boyfriend, I said, I have a problem with this. I've put a lot of my money into these products. I don't feel good about selling them anymore. You know what I mean? I can't lose the money, but I don't want to be that capitalist. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, and I think that comes down to it. I mean, especially living in the United States, because that's all I can talk about is living in the United States, that, you only make a certain amount of money, and then things cost a specific amount of money. And then if you want to purchase things, you want to get the most for your dollar. And sometimes those things that are in your price range are not sourced here, they are sourced overseas.
Yeah, right. No, that's exactly it. I think it also, I don't want to divert, I'll just say it real quick, but I think it becomes a class issue. People are, in our class, we only have so much money. We have to make it, like you said, we have to make our dollar go as far as we can. And then you cross into ethical issues.
Yep. It is. It's a tough issue, especially, and then, if we even just look at it in a mundane way, you go to the grocery store and you buy your groceries, but then for us, the people who are more spiritually aware and people who want to be conscious about what they're purchasing and what they're using, it becomes even more of an issue because it's something we are focused on, as opposed to someone who may not be so spiritually engaged or focused in their life, and they're just, working in home, and they're not thinking about anything other than their basic needs being met. But once your basic needs are met and you are now, working through a spiritual growth and expansion. It's looking at, you know, where was this candle made?
Right. And in the context of just a mundane everyday life, like most of the people I know are pagans or they're just new age spiritualists. Most, if not all of them, are very much aware that, oh, my clothes were made in Bangladesh and my food is probably not ethically sourced. I am lower middle class. I literally can't do anything about it. I wish I could, you know, shop elsewhere, shop fair trade. I can't, and it sucks when you know that there's a problem, but you feel completely helpless to fix it, to address it.
Yeah. I guess I get my only thought is that, you know, that's what happens when you live in a capitalist country like America. You know? And
then we circle right back to the growing number of people who are trying to disconnect from hypermodernity and being plugged in all the time and being a part of this rat race of Western society. Like, people do want to go back into the woods and have an earth-based natural existence. I totally understand. I sympathize. I support it. I'm here 100%. But then there's the issue of, you know, appropriation and what is appropriate for us to do. You know what I mean? Like, I totally understand and support people who want to break away from the type of society we've built for ourselves and all that comes with it. I love it that people want to explore paganism and earth-based spiritualities, but again, there's a very appropriate way to do that. And here's the question: how do I collectively, or, you know, collectively we as business owners or new age retailers or those of us who run workshops, how do we address the topic of cultural appropriation to our customers and clients and followers? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, I think that, and for me, I think that's a very touchy subject because, as we've already said, just looking at someone, we can't really tell if they're appropriating something or not because we don't know the whole story. Right. And especially if they just stop by your booth or they're just sitting down for one workshop I offer. I mean, I only know them for that limited amount of time, and I can't make judgments like that on someone else's spiritual path, you know?
No, of course not. And you're right. The one thing I started doing is, well, first, I basically run a shop that I would want to visit. And because I actively don't want to pass judgment on strangers passing through my shop. So I figured, well, what's the best way to address these issues? I'm not going to just assume this person is going to buy this sage, you know, this bundle of sage and do something wrong with it. So what I started doing was writing up instructions. You know, this is what this is called. This is where it came from. This is the company that used it. And this is how you use it. And it's just, I just have, you know, my mom and I spend hours and hours before every festival just writing them up and printing them out. And they're just there. I don't presume that, oh, do you know that if you buy that sage that, you know, I don't do that. I just hear some information in case you wanted to, you know, learn something new.
That's smart. That's a good way of doing it. That way you don't have to, and if someone knows if someone is already aware, then good, you know, but if someone isn't, then you've educated them in a way too.
Yeah.
I think that's wonderful.
Thank you. Yeah, the golden rule is very important to me. I honestly try to live by my own example. I don't like when people presume things about me. As you know, I just had to be like, here's some information, you know, if you buy crystals or candles or herbs from me, you know, you get a free informational card that we made them, and here you go. Let me know if you have questions. That's all I do.
Nice.
You don't have to jump down people's throats.
Right, right.
You also want to be educated. That's kind of our job.
Right, right. I don't see any questions specifically about.
No.
No.
There's no.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the comments are just, basically what we were just talking to.
Uh-huh.
Do you have anything to add, Obsidian?
You've been very quiet.
She's been handling chat, I noticed.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
She's good for that.
Oh, thank you. I was, responding and trying to follow up and look if there were any questions. But in regards of my thoughts on the subject, I would say, I suppose on this topic, the line between anything undeserved and, let's say, a nice way, a nice conduct is respect.
Right.
Respect sums it all. You need to pay respect, especially in eclectic practices like we have. It's just, if it's shallow, if you pick some things up from there and something else from there, from this culture and this is one culture, the show respect, be sure you know what you do, at least a little bit. Read, learn, and if it makes true sense for you, then you can incorporate in your practice what you don't hurt anyone by doing that. If you do with respect, I mean true respect, just something shallow. So and it goes with everything else, I guess. If you respect people, you don't want to buy product done by slaves, modern slaves, because you pay respect to life, so you don't want to be part of that. And you can put this line, I think, everywhere. It will draw a really clear line between what's good and what's not good. And about, if I can add my 2 cents about what can sound, we will say, logical, or not, maybe not logical, but but I don't know how to formulate that. Okay, let me restart. About our personal path, even if we are white women, in this life, but what about the previous one?
You nailed it. That's a good point.
Yeah, and I cannot stop to think of it, because I grew up with a dad who was as white as I am, all right? But he was truly fascinated, more than that, connected to Native American.
Right.
But when I say connected, he read about all the how do you say tribute? How do you
Tribes?
say? Tribes, thank you. He read about all the tribes, everything that he can. He owned a shit tons of books, and he read them all because he was feeling Native American inside of himself, and he was really, really, really connected. He nailed it. He knew because he learned, and he was knowing it inside. So when he let his hair grow and grow and grow and grow, it didn't sound like an appropriation, because he was remembering something. There were a connection there. And that can be, and that is always, not always, but really often the case with people like us, which are, I guess, spiritually awakened. We carry with us what we have been in previous life. And sometimes this is part of our path to connect again with one of the previous culture we were apart from. So, yeah. I think we need to have that in mind. We can be connected still to one of our previous incarnation.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
That was my 2 cents. Sorry.
That's a good 2 cents.
I think the biggest issue or the biggest impact when we talk about, misappropriation of other cultures and other spiritual practices, I think the biggest concerns and most destructive and unbeneficial impacts is when someone profits from it, and someone is publicly ridiculing or mocking or making fun of the other culture. I think that when we, as eclectic pagans, if you identify as an eclectic pagan or an eclectic witch, and you're practicing in your own home and you're doing it with respect, like Obsidian Fire discussed, I think that's your personal path, and whether you're doing it with true intention and authentic compassion, and you're trying to connect, or if you're just mocking and making fun of another spiritual path or culture,
Yeah. Everyone know. I think we know too when we are just vain. When we approach one or another culture, we know that if it's just just to take a little bit of this and that and making something up with this, we know if it's not respectful enough, if we lack knowledge about this, we know it. I think we know it. So everyone has to be, I suppose, honest with themselves.
Right.
To look at the things they want to do or they think about doing with true honesty, and at this point they will know if there is enough respect, if there is a true connection, if there is any need to go further in the culture. They will know. We will know.
Right.
And then once you know if there is a true need in this, a true connection, the next line is again respect, true respect. And then it's okay for me. I mean, I don't need more than that, because it sums up everything, I suppose, at least for me.
Bettina, do you have a video on your channel about exchange and appropriation, or am I dreaming that?
I only had one video, I think video number 2, about the Sephora witch kit, but that wasn't about cultural appropriation, like specifically. It was just the problem with that type of product.
Okay.
So I mean, it was. I did talk about cultural appropriation in the context of commercialization.
Okay.
But it was like a 10-minute video. But
in my head I have an image of you talking about the difference between exchanging ideas and thoughts and then appropriating, and I thought you made a comparison. Maybe it was in that video. I don't remember. Yeah, maybe.
Huh?
Maybe, was it? Did you talk?
Yeah, it might have been.
Okay, I just wanted to point our viewers to that if they wanted more on that sort of idea of where you were coming from, because I think that is really the difference when you're exchanging ideas and exchanging, because and the reason why I'm mentioning this is because someone in the chat was talking about how humans should be happy to share each other's cultures, especially, and I would say especially since we're in America and we have, people from so many different cultures and countries coming together to live together in one country, that you're going to have this, as I said, my ex-husband was Puerto Rican and my kids have this blending of these, different, I had a meme and Pepe and he had an abuelita and abuelito, so, I mean, you have this mix of different cultures, and the children are growing up with this, that there's going to be this blending and sharing of ideas. And if there's spirituality involved, you may have a child who's brought up Jewish and Hindu. I mean, that would be, wild. Yeah. What would the holidays look like, kind of thing. That there's definitely that sharing and blending, as opposed to just outright misappropriating and doing it with, mocking or disrespect and disregard to what it stands for. It's just a Halloween decoration or,
so yeah. No, you know that we should be exchanging cultures in our experiences. And I think that the term politically correct has totally thrown a lot of people off, because they think, oh, we're becoming too politically correct. Well, Obsidian said the word respect. That's literally what politically correct is. I've seen so many people, like on Twitter and Facebook, make the comparison of, like, if when somebody says, oh, we're becoming too politically correct, what they're really saying is, I have to be held accountable for my actions now. I've been disrespectful, or I've been saying inappropriate things, or being racist, or being sexist, or being homophobic, all those types of things. So really what politically correct is just being respectful and being a decent person and being held accountable when we do or say bad things.
Yeah. It can get so blurred, I think, things, and when we talk about I think people's feelings, obviously people who truly strongly identify with either their spirituality or another aspect of their personality or their person, people who have insecurities about things, they can get really offended really easily, even if someone isn't intending to disrespect them. And it happens not because, they intended, they grasped the wrong word to express a thought.
Right.
And I think that respect goes both ways, if I say something that offends someone and I find out it offended them, and if that person's feelings mean anything to me, I will try to, make amends, but sometimes the other person may not even want to hear it. They're so stuck on the fact that maybe I said something offensive. They don't want to hear that I misspoke. That's it. They're just going to focus on the fact that I said something inappropriate, but didn't mean to. People can get crazy.
Oh, of course. And I think it's important to remember that all feelings are valid. So somebody who feels offended or feels hurt for whatever reason, you said something not meaning to sound rude, but you did, and they were offended. Every feeling is valid. The question is this feeling helpful? Am I expressing myself in a healthy way, or am I being toxic right now? So yeah, all feelings are valid. It's just a matter of how we express them and how we learn from them.
Right, right. I mean, for both parties too.
Right. No, yeah, both parties.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I agree. All feelings are valid. You're the one who's feeling the feeling.
Yeah.
You know, but sometimes I think it's important when we feel a feeling, if someone says something to me and I become offended by what they said, it's at least for me, and at least in my own spiritual growth and learning and path, that I then consider, why am I offended? You know,
right.
And I think sometimes people they just latch on to being offended. Yeah. But that's their journey.
Yeah, that's correct.
That's their journey. Was there anything? I know there's a lot of conversation going on in the chat. We have about 15 minutes left. Anything? There was talking about selling things again. eBay store selling kits, spell kits, and not respecting what they are. Well, because you brought up the
witch kit.
Yeah, the witch kit. I don't see anything. Was there anything Obsidian worth sort of touching base on?
What? I'm sorry.
Was there anything in that chat worth commenting about, or? Well,
the conversation revolves around what we were saying. So now,
okay.
Not necessarily.
Is there another point that you wanted to bring up? We have about 15 minutes, Bettina.
I was prepared. We touched on a lot of the things. I guess what I would want to conclude with now, me and my girlfriends earlier today, we kind of had a conversation about what examples of appropriation can we think about that we've experienced in our everyday lives in the metaphysical pagan communities, and we came up with a few. I'm just gonna go over them real quick. So, like, we talked about the concept of going native, Americans kind of adopting native practices, and then what do I have here? We were talking about white supremacists kind of perverting and bastardizing the Norse pagan cultures. So, and then there's the Halloween costumes, like the native headdresses, and like the saris, and wearing hijabs as a costume. So I guess there's so many different ways to be disrespectful and racist and commit horrible appropriations. And I guess the one thing I'm always curious about is, how do we address that in everyday life? Like, if I go to work tomorrow, for example, and I see somebody, a white supremacist with, oh, you can't see it, but I've got runes that for me are very special to my ancestry. But if I go into work tomorrow and there's a white supremacist with KKK patches and a swastika, and he's got runes on and a Thor's hammer, what do you do? You know what I mean? Like, how we've talked about it, but what are we going to do about it? How are we going to fix the issue going forward and solve the problem?
Yeah, well, I mean, in that example, I mean, I don't even know, because I mean, does the spiritual path belong to just one person? Especially, again, if we go back to that idea that we live in a country where there's all these different cultures that come together. I mean, who's to say that KKK member isn't of an ancestry that comes from a Celtic spirituality?
Yeah, and
if he or she does, then that path is just as much theirs as it is another person's.
Right. And then we can also go back to the part where we said all feelings are valid. Maybe their white supremacist identity is intrinsically a part of their Norse heritage. And I'm over here thinking, but is that acceptable? Free speech is one thing, but should we condone this?
But acceptable to who? Who is judge?
Right. That's why it's a very complex issue. I would feel very angry in that scenario. I would feel angry in a lot of scenarios where somebody is being incredibly rude or disrespectful. But the question is, like, what do I do about it? If somebody is going on a homophobic tirade against my sister, I will step in because she's my sister. We have a personal relationship. But what do I do in any other scenario? How do I fix it?
I guess, the only thing that comes to my mind, because I'm a big person who believes in lead by example and walk your talk. So if my biggest way of teaching is to be that I'm trying to teach. So if I identified with the Celtic and the Celtic spirituality, and if that was mine, because and I saw that individual and I felt upset, I would be the best example I can be of what I imagine this spiritual person of this spiritual path would be. And at the end of the day, it's just about me and my relationship with my gods. So as long as I'm doing what I feel directed to do, then I'm okay with it. And it may not be what the next person feels it's the best thing to do, or the next person feels to do, but it's what I feel to do. And if I can lay my head down on the pillow at night and go to sleep and feel that I have done the best that I can in each circumstance that I was faced with, then I'm good. Right. I can't force someone else to see things my way, but I don't know. I don't think there's one answer for everyone.
And I don't think there's meant to be one answer. It's kind of like, I asked the question just for the opportunity to have like self-reflection, because I think we all experience awful thing. Like we see racist things happen, or homophobic things, sexist things, cases of cultural appropriation, like we've been talking about. We see it often, in our daily lives. And I know a lot of people think after the fact, it's like, oh, I should have stepped in. I should have done something. It's like, maybe you should have. What would you have done? How would it have improved the situation? And I think leading by example, like you said, is important. I am an angry person, and I think sometimes maybe it's a good thing I don't step in because things like that do make me very angry. And I don't want to add to the problems. I want to I want to improve them. Because it is important. Like respect is lacking in a lot of areas of our culture.
Respect is lacking in a lot of people.
Yeah.
Period.
People, yeah.
See, the problem is not the culture. The problem is the people.
People make the culture too. So yeah. In people.
In my eyes, I mean.
Yeah.
When you bear hate in your heart, nothing good will come of it.
Right.
So you need to be yourself, for other, as nice as you can, and then you will look at things the way you think. If you are angry and bitful and on, then everything you think or touch or do or use will be imbued with this thought, this train of thought, this conduct. So it will taint what you use, what you do. And so first, be nice, be respectful. Don't do to other what you don't want others to do to you. I don't know how to sum that this out in correct English, but ne fais pas aux autres ce que tu ne veux pas qu'on te fasse. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. I think I saw someone commented in the chat that respect isn't given, it's earned. Yeah, but I think if we start with the basic idea that all humans deserve respect because we are all sacred beings, there's just a basic respect that I believe we ought to give each other, because we are humans and we're all living on the earth in a physical life, in an incarnation together, that there's just a mutual respect that is just across the board. I think then from there we build on, you know, there are certain people that I respect more than others because of my relationship with them, because of my interactions with them, because of what we've shared experiences give them another level of respect. But I've also encountered individuals who have done things that my respect for them has plummeted directly in has dropped, that, I just respect them because they're human beings. There's nothing more because of what the experience has been between us.
Yeah, respect should be the standard.
Yeah. The problem is, it is not. It is not. So, yeah.
So we've come to the end of our hour, everyone.
Yeah.
It's the end of our hour.
Okay.
Bettina, I want to thank you for joining us. It was wonderful.
For having me.
We should do this again. I'm looking ahead and trying to schedule other guests, so I'll be in touch if you'd want to join us again.
Yeah, definitely. I will hopefully be getting back to my regular weekly video posting. So maybe the new year I'll have time.
Yes. So if you're in the chat and you haven't checked out Bettina's channel, please go check her out. She's got some videos up there, very insightful, very educational. And yeah, I know her, haven't seen her in years, but in person, we've done some work together in person. So I know she's a good person to get some information from. Check out her Facebook page, The Queen's Grove. That link is also in the information section of the video. So go check her out there. If you're on the East Coast, look for her when you go to all those wonderful festivals. Hey, were you at Pagan Pride this year in Lakeville?
No. I usually only go to Eastern Mass Pagan Pride, and that's usually on the North Shore.
Oh, well, you should check that out.
Yeah, I've got a lot of Pagan Pride events to check out. I've been mostly doing my fairs in Maine because I lived there just briefly enough. I've just moved back to Massachusetts a few months ago, so I'm just all over New England right now.
Yes. Awesome, wonderful things.
Thank you for having me. This has been fun.
Yay. Stay on after I disconnect.
Sure.
And thank you all in chat for being part of chat. Next week, what are we doing next week, Obsidian?
Is it moon magic?
What is it?
Moon magic, I think.
Moon magic? Are we talking moon magic next week?
Yeah, moon magic.
We're going to be talking moon magic next week, everyone. So be sure you tune in. And there is a Friday that's coming up, the 25th of January. It's going to be a pre-recorded episode because it's my birthday that day, and I'm not going to be here on YouTube. That's for sure. So next week, check us out next week. Until next time, I love you.
Et oui, merci de nous avoir suivis. J'ai pas été très bavarde, mais voilà, j'ai essayé de gérer le chat comme j'ai pu. Donc, j'espère que vous avez apprécié cette émission. Retrouvez-nous la semaine prochaine pour un nouveau sujet de discussion. Soyez là, on compte sur vous. Bye bye.
Mwah. Blessed be everyone.